Man is subject to vanity, and human life is in darkness. From Nazareth, Revisited by Brother Robert Roberts. Man is subject to vanity, and human life is in darkness. Jesus, while upon earth, said, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." These words appeal to a need most felt by those who are most alive in an intellectual sense. Men who discern in the starry immensities around them the sphere of immeasurable aspiration, the potentiality of unutterable heights of faculty and glorious life, who, looking into themselves and out upon the face of the fair earth which they tread, with its multitudinous manifestation of life, with some latent intuition of the high meaning of things, have their hearts drawn out into infinite longings which nothing in human life as it now is can satisfy. All men experience the vanity of life as it now is upon earth, but none so keenly as this. They labor and are heavy laden, labor in a futile effort to grasp the reason of things, are heavy laden in the mental oppression which the immensity and the inscrutability of things brings upon their spirits. If Christ is what he alleged he was, there is peace for this intellectual perturbation which cannot elsewhere be found. In the light of his existence and mission, creation is delivered from the gloom in which it appears to merely natural eyes. If unbelievers say there is no gloom in creation for them, it is the mere repartee of intellectual resentment, or the utterance of a crude experience which has not yet learned the sadness of life as it now is, the sadness that inevitably waits when the effervescence of young blood has subsided, when the poetic ardors of fresh life have expended themselves, when business has lost its aim and its interest, and when mortal energy wanes, and man is forced to recognize in the encroachments of feebleness and the disappearance of friends in the universal grave the sad tokens of the truth that comes home at last, however long ignored in pride or silence in the din of folly, that man is subject to vanity and that human life is in darkness. Jesus came to preach the gospel. From ELPIS, Israel, by Brother John Thomas. Jesus came to preach the gospel. Jesus came to preach the gospel. The Spirit of the Lord, saith he, is upon me, because he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor, and to preach the acceptable year of the Lord. Luke 4:19. It is admitted then that Jesus fulfilled his mission. Consequently, in his proclamation, he preached the good news of the acceptable season, or blessed era of the Lord. But what was the great focal truth of this acceptable year? Let Jesus answer the question in his own words. I must preach the gospel of God, for therefore am I sent. Luke 4:43. And so much did he preach about this kingdom that the people became impatient and sought to take him by force and make him king. But he would not permit it. And because they thought that the kingdom of God is immediately to appear, he spake a parable to them, in which he gave them to understand that he must first take a journey into a far country, to be presented before the Ancient of Days, to receive from him the kingdom, and then to return, when he would bestow upon his servants power and authority over the cities of the world. Daniel 7:13-14, Luke 19:11-17. According to this arrangement, Jesus rose from the dead and took his departure. When he ascended to the right hand of the Majesty in the heavens, where he is now. He has not yet received the kingdom, glory, and dominion, or he would have already returned. He is waiting for this, sitting at the right hand of God until his foes are made his footstool. Psalm 110:1. He will then appear in his kingdom and rule as king over all the earth. The gospel then was preached to Abraham by the angel of the Lord, and it was preached by Jesus to his own nation and to them only. For he was not sent save to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Matthew 15:24. Paul also declares that it was preached to that generation of Israelites whose carcasses fell in the wilderness, but it did not profit them because they did not believe it. Hebrews 4:2. Therefore, God swore in his wrath that they should not enter into the rest. It proclaimed. Hebrews 3:18-19. Before he suffered on the accursed tree, Jesus sent his apostles and 70 others throughout the land to preach the kingdom of God. In recording their obedience to his command, Luke says, they went through the towns preaching the gospel. Luke 9:2-6. So that it is clear that to preach the kingdom is to preach the gospel, and to preach the gospel is to preach the kingdom of God. The Crucifixion of Christ. From Be Transformed, Volume 1, by Brother Gilbert, Growcott. The Crucifixion of Christ. The crucifixion of Christ is the most public event of all time. All mankind's history is dated from Christ, forward and backward, AD and BC. This present entire heathen pagan world, in international dealings, dates every act according to his birth. Diverse as they are, it is their common point of reference. This is no coincidence, no mistake, no accident or oversight. It is a providential, condemning witness. From God's point of view, Christ's life and death form the pivot of all human history. All radiates from it. All revolves around it. Sin, the devil, the diabolos, in the Romans, in the Jews, in the world of mankind, openly rejected him, openly rejected the perfect Son of God, who had never done anything but good, and put him to a cruel death, cut him off violently from the land of the living. The seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman, the eternal enmity begun in Eden, brought to a climax at Calvary, finally resolved when the last enemy, death, is destroyed, and God is all in all. Christ totally defeated and destroyed sin in himself. From the Purifying of the Heavenly, by Brother Gilbert, Growcott. Christ totally defeated and destroyed sin in himself. The work Christ did, the essential race-redeeming work that was preordained and foreshadowed from the beginning, was the overcoming and destroying and publicly repudiating and condemning and putting to death of sin in himself, and necessarily for himself, not as a personal, selfish motive, but as a practical, necessary operation to achieve the race redemption. As a moral and physical actuality, Christ could conquer and destroy sin only in himself. That was the arena of his total and perfect victory over sin, by which he laid the eternal foundation for his further work. He will complete the battle against sin by, number 1, absorbing into his own perfect, sin-free self all who accept this deliverance that God has provided and do what God requires them to do to receive it. And number 2, physically destroying all who do not accept him and enter into him. In this way, the whole race will eventually be purged and saved as a race, though not all individuals of it. Christ, in the God-appointed way, and with the indispensable God-provided help and guidance and strengthening, had to, number 1, cleanse himself from sin, And number 2, destroy sin in himself by total, inseparable life and death work. That is the root and basis and meaning of what we call sacrifice. It was his only way to his own personal salvation. He was made perfect by suffering, Hebrews 2:10, and this was the suffering required. He was redeemed by his own blood, Hebrews 9:12. His great work was not a mere shadow, not a mere form, not a mere symbol illustrating what should be done to someone else. It was an actual, essential accomplishment, the self-cleansing from and destruction of sin. He didn't just typify this, he did it. He didn't pay the penalty for anyone. He did the actual job of destroying sin that God's holiness required to be done for the race to be saved. He did it in and for himself. There was no other way or he could do it. Free Bible lessons to download and print. Study at your own pace. Just go to www.sites.google.com/site/bereans.ph/courses, and you can always inform us of your progress. May the Lord guide you in your search for the truth. Libreng aralin mula sa Biblia na maaaring i-download at i-print. Pag-aralan sa sariling pamamaraan at panahon. Pumunta lang sa www.sites.google.com/site/bereans.ph/courses, at maaari mo ring ipalam sa amin ang iyong paglago. Naway gabayan ka ng Panginoon sa paghahanap mo sa katotohanan.